Terith stood alone beneath the ancient canopy, the wind stirring through the high branches above him. The moon hung like a pale eye in the sky, its light filtering through the leaves in silver veins. The night felt alive, the rustle of the forest a soft murmur in his ears, the scent of wet earth and pine sharp on the air. Every twig crackled beneath his boots as if the forest was watching him, waiting. He didn't look at the ground, didn't look at the tree trunks that twisted like gnarled hands reaching for the stars. His gaze was fixed ahead, past the clearing, where the shadows moved with purpose. Somewhere beyond that, something moved in the dark, a heartbeat that wasn't his own. His fingers brushed the smooth shaft of his bow, the familiar weight comforting, but the string was silent. His hand hovered for a moment over his quiver, the arrow nestled in it like a secret. He didn't need it. Not tonight. The forest called to him. It called in the way the wind calls to a leaf, in the way the rain calls to a dry stone. It was a murmur at the edge of his thoughts, the thrum of the trees deep in his chest. He could feel it, the pulse of the land, the call to move. He took a slow breath, his chest rising and falling like the forest itself. Then, without a sound, he moved. The change came, not with a snap or a jolt, but as a slow, stretching thing, a crack in the dark that spread across his skin like fire creeping under ice. He stumbled, then caught himself, his legs thickening, his spine twisting in a way that was more than pain. It was the forest settling into his bones, the call of the wild becoming a part of him. He had never felt anything like it, the rhythm of his blood beating louder, faster, his breath quickened, the air heavy, as though he were inhaling something darker than the night. The transformation was not an event, it was a descent. Each step, each breath peeled away something he had known, something he had been. His senses sharpened, the edges of the world now clear and distinct. He could hear every rustle of the leaves, every soft breath in the dark, every living thing in the forest as if they were all part of him. The world had become a blur of smell and sound and instinct. His claws dug into the soil beneath his feet, the earth giving way beneath his weight, and he did not question the power that surged through him. He did not care for the distant memory of who he had been, Terith, the son of Elden Root, the boy who had asked too many questions. All that was left now was hunger, the primal thirst that burned in his chest. Something moved in the dark. He pounced, a blur of fur and muscle, tearing through the night, his vision focused on the shape ahead, the heat of its body seeping into the air. He heard the thing's heart beat, felt the rhythm of it, the pulse that called to him. The stag, noble and swift, had no chance. It didn't see him coming. His claws raked across its flank, blood spraying in a hot arc. Its scream was sharp, a fleeting thing, but it was enough. For a moment there was stillness. The hunt had paused, and the world too seemed to hold its breath. The air was thick with the scent of blood, the sound of his own pulse ringing in his ears. The stag's eyes were wide, glassy, the last embers of its life dimming. His jaws closed over its throat, and he drank deep, his teeth sinking into soft flesh, the warmth of it flooding his senses. He did not know how long he had been there, on all fours, drinking the life from his prey. Time had stopped, or maybe it had warped into something strange, something that didn't belong to him. But there was no space for thought, no room for regret. There was only the need, the hunger, the call. When he pulled away, his bloodied muzzle was slick with the remnants of the hunt. He stood, swaying on two legs now, his hands shaking, the aftertaste of the kill on his tongue. His senses reeled, but the world was still a blur of green and shadow, the forest thick around him. The stars overhead were bright and cold, their light strange now. He looked at the stag, its lifeless body crumpled in the grass. And then, something shifted again. The hunger was gone, and in its place, something else, a quiet, a stillness. a weight that pressed against him, the absence of the life he had taken. For a moment, he felt the pull to lie down, to rest, but something held him upright. The world around him had changed. The trees, the earth, the stars, they were no longer distant things. They were a part of him, and he a part of them. But it was not enough, it never was. A rustle in the underbrush caught his ear, another heartbeat, another presence. He turned, muscles coiled, eyes flicking to the shadows where something watched him. The forest breathed with him. It was waiting for him to move. The hunt wasn't over, and so he moved again, faster this time, the thrill of the chase rising in his veins. There would be no stopping him now. The forest had its hunter, and he would run until there was nothing left. Deep in the heart of Valenwood, where the trees stretch tall and ancient, the Bosmer live in harmony with the wilds around them. A people defined by their connection to nature, the Wood Elves have walked the forests of Tamriel for millennia, bound by a sacred pact that governs their every action. Agile and quick, their archers are the finest in all of Tamriel, while their culture, rich in myth and mystery, has shaped them into fierce protectors of their homeland. From their unique physical traits to their complex spiritual beliefs, the Bosmer are as enigmatic as the land they call home. Today, we pierce the heart of this fascinating race, unveiling their traditions, struggles, and the timeless bond they share with the wilderness. The Bosmer stood apart from their elven cousins, their appearance reflecting their deep bond with Valenwood. While they were typically shorter than the Altmer and Dunmer, their smaller frames housed unmatched agility and grace. This natural quickness, paired with exceptional reflexes, made them unparalleled scouts and archers. Their eyes were perhaps their most striking feature, with star-like pupils that shimmered faintly, a phenomenon that some scholars believed mirrored their connection to Y'ffre and the heavens. This distinct trait often gave Bosmer an otherworldly presence, as though they were born not merely of the forest, but of the very stars. Another unique characteristic was their antlers. While many Bosmer adorned themselves with artificial antlers as part of ceremonial or cultural traditions, others bore real, magically grown antlers, a gift believed to signify divine favor or an especially profound link to the Green Pact. These living adornments often became symbols of reverence among their kin and marked such individuals as extraordinary protectors of Valenwood's verdant life. The practice of filing teeth to sharp points was a deliberate choice rather than a natural feature. Sexual dimorphism among the Bosmer added another layer of intrigue to their society. While both men and women were generally smaller in stature compared to other races, Bosmer women could grow taller than their male counterparts. This trait often challenged perceptions among outsiders who expected uniform diminutiveness from the so-called Wood Elves. Such diversity within their people contributed to the Bosmer's reputation as enigmatic and unpredictable. While their diminutive stature often led others to underestimate them, the Bosmer's physical characteristics symbolized their adaptability and resilience. They were a living embodiment of Valenwood itself, wild, untamed, and teeming with life in all its forms. In the ancient epochs of Tamriel's history, the Bosmer's origins were as fluid and enigmatic as the verdant forests they would one day call home. Before the Green Pact with Y'ffre, the Bosmer existed in a primordial state known as the Ooze, a realm of perpetual shape-shifting. Within the Ooze, they were beings of endless possibility, unbound by the rigid constraints of form or identity. This formless existence was not merely a quirk of nature, but a reflection of a deeply chaotic and untamed world, where survival necessitated adaptability above all else. The Bosmer of this era were creatures of constant transformation, becoming predator or prey, wind or shadow, as the moment demanded. While this malleability was a gift, it was also a curse, for the lack of defined form meant a lack of unity and purpose. Valenwood itself, in its earliest state, was a realm of primal chaos, its life unfettered and ceaselessly shifting. The forest, untamed and untethered, seemed to mirror the Bosmer's fluid existence. The turning point came with the intervention of Y'ffre, the god of the forest and the storyteller of the Orbis. It is said that Y'ffre descended upon Valenwood and wove the first true story, bringing order to the chaotic world of the ooze. In doing so, Y'ffre imposed form and identity upon the Bosmer, granting them fixed shapes and with it the capacity for civilization. This act marked the birth of the Green Pact, an agreement that would forever bind the Bosmer to the will of the forest. Y'ffre's law was simple but profound. The Bosmer were forbidden from harming the vegetation of Valenwood. In exchange, they were granted dominion over the animals of the forest and a harmonious existence with their environment. The Green Pact reshaped not only the Bosmer's physical forms, but also their way of life. Where once they were amorphous beings in a chaotic world, they became hunters, warriors, and artisans, bound by a strict moral and spiritual code. This code not only prohibited the cutting of trees or the harming of plant life, but also elevated the consumption of flesh to a sacred act. The Bosmer became exclusively carnivorous, their diet and rituals centered around the animals of Valenwood. It is a testament to their reverence for the pact that even their dead were returned to the forest in rituals of cannibalism, ensuring that nothing went to waste and that the balance of nature was preserved. Yet not all Bosmer embraced this new order. Legends speak of those who rejected the Green Pact, yearning to retain their shape-shifting abilities and the chaotic freedom of the ooze. These dissenters became the Oathbreakers, cursed by Y'ffre to a shadowed existence, neither living nor truly dead. They were banished to the realm of the ooze, a purgatory state where their formlessness became their torment. It is said that these Oathbreakers still linger, trapped between worlds, awaiting a time of renewal when they might reclaim their place in Tamriel. The transformation brought about by the Green Pact was profound, but its origins also reveal a shared mythology with their feline neighbors, the Khajiit. Khajiiti lore tells of Y'ffre, their version of Y'ffre, who shaped the Khajiit from Nirni's formless children while leaving others to become the Bosmer. This shared ancestry speaks to an intertwined destiny between the two races, as guardians of Tamriel's southern reaches. While the Khajiit embody the desert and the moon, the Bosmer represent the forest and its secrets, together forming a delicate balance in the natural order. Guiding the spiritual and political fabric of Bosmer society were two figures of immense importance, the Sylvanar and the Green Lady. The Sylvanar acted as the spiritual voice of the Bosmer, embodying the collective will of the people and serving as a mediator between Valenwood and the outside world. He was as much a symbol of harmony as he was a practical leader, his role shaped as much by mystical intuition as by diplomacy. The Green Lady, on the other hand, was the Bosmer's fury incarnate, a warrior protector chosen to safeguard their people and their way of life. Together, these figures represented the dual nature of the Bosmer spirit, nurturing and fierce, peaceful and unyielding. The Pact's restrictions on harming Valenwood's vegetation required ingenious solutions to everyday needs. Building materials, tools, and even weapons were crafted from bone, hide, and sinew rather than wood or plant-derived materials. This dependency on the remains of the hunted further bound the Bosmer to their prey, creating a cycle of respect and necessity. Their culture celebrated the hunt not merely as survival, but as a sacred act that honored Y'ffre, the forest god. The Green Pact also held deep implications for interactions with other races. While Bosmer living beyond Valenwood were not bound by its tenets, Those within the forest upheld the pact with unwavering loyalty. Conflict arose when outsiders failed to respect these traditions, leading to tensions and, at times, outright hostility. The pact was not just law, it was identity, and any affront to its principles was seen as a threat to the very essence of the Bosmer. To be sure, the Bosmer expressed their artistry and identity in ways deeply intertwined with the natural beauty of Valenwood. Their art drew heavily from the forest that surrounded and sustained them, taking inspiration from the shapes, colors, and textures of their wild homeland. Unlike the intricate tapestries of the Altmer or the towering stone edifices of the Aelids, Bosmeri art favored materials they could gather without violating the Green Pact. Feathers, bones, hides, and even the naturally shed bark of Valenwood trees found their way into their creations, forming pieces that were both striking and ephemeral, much like the lives of the creatures from which these materials were drawn. Jewelry was a particularly notable form of expression. Crafted from silver, gold, or more commonly bone and horn, these pieces often featured motifs of the forest, leaves, vines, or predatory beasts, symbolizing the Bosmer's harmonious yet predatory relationship with their environment. Antlers, whether magically grown or artificially affixed, were adorned with intricate carvings or gold leaf, underscoring their dual role as symbols of status and spiritual reverence. A hunter might wear a necklace fashioned from the claws of a particularly formidable foe, a quiet testament to their prowess and respect for the life they took. Bosmeri clothing was as practical as it was beautiful. Lightweight, flexible, and designed for movement, their garments were tailored to their active lives as hunters, scouts, and warriors. Leathers were dyed in earthy tones that blended seamlessly with the verdant forest, allowing them to vanish into the undergrowth when needed. Furs were common in colder regions or highland areas of Valenwood, but even in these cases, the Bosmer's craftsmanship emphasized ease of motion. Capes and hoods were often embellished with feathers or beadwork, a subtle flourish that spoke to the wearer's individuality. Armor took on a similar ethos. Bosmer rarely employed heavy metals, relying instead on materials like hardened leather or chitin, occasionally reinforced with bone. This choice was not only in keeping with the Green Pact, but also practical for their style of warfare. A Bosmer archer or guerrilla fighter required speed and stealth, and their armor provided just enough protection without sacrificing agility. Helmets often incorporated animal motifs, their designs blending naturalistic aesthetics with functionality. The sight of a Bosmer warrior with antlers curving from their helm could inspire awe or fear in their enemies. In the realm of textiles, the Bosmer were less prolific than their Altmeri cousins, but no less skilled. They wove with fibers derived from animals rather than plants, such as silk spun by certain Valenwood insects or the wool of domesticated beasts. These fabrics were light yet durable, ideal for the warm, humid climate of the Valenwood lowlands. Patterns often echoed the rhythms of the forest, with swirling designs that mirrored the movements of rivers, winds, and growth. Even their tools and weapons bore artistic touches. Bowyers were revered craftsmen, often passing their techniques down through generations. A Bosmer bow was not merely a tool of war, but a masterpiece of design, its curves shaped to perfection and its surfaces engraved with protective runes or scenes of legendary hunts. Quivers were adorned with feathers and beads, their craftsmanship reflecting the pride Bosmer took in their unmatched skill as archers. While Valenwood itself was the primary influence on Bosmeri art, occasional contact with other cultures left its mark. The stonework techniques of the Aelids, though seldom used, could be seen in the rare monuments or stone carvings that adorned their cities. Trade brought glimpses of imperial metals and dyes, which were adapted sparingly, often reserved for the Silvernar or other figures of prominence. Additionally, Bosmer hunters roamed the dense forests, utilizing their legendary archery skills to procure game. Wild boar, venison, and pheasant were common staples, as were fish from Valenwood's rivers and coasts. Preservation techniques such as smoking and salting ensured the availability of food even during leaner months. They developed a cultural artistry in their preparation of meals, using intricate methods to enhance flavor without the benefit of plant-based seasonings. Occasionally, as we previously discussed, they practiced a solemn and ceremonial form of cannibalism, particularly during the wild hunt. This gruesome ritual transformed participants into savage, bestial forms to serve as an unstoppable force against their enemies. After the hunt, consuming the bodies of both allies and foes was seen not as a grotesque act, but as a sacred duty, honoring the spirits of the fallen and recycling their essence into the cycle of nature. Among the more everyday practices, Bosmer often embraced culinary ingenuity. Using animal-derived ingredients like milk, eggs, and fats, they created hearty stews and roasted dishes. Recipes varied between regions, as clans developed their distinct styles to reflect their available resources. For instance, coastal Bosmer were more likely to favor seafood-based meals, while those deeper in the forests relied heavily on land game. In addition to meat, they consumed byproducts like bone marrow, blood, and even hides, crafting an ethos of waste nothing. The Green Pact emphasized respect for their prey, and this principle was embedded deeply into their culinary traditions. Every part of a hunted animal was used, from meat for sustenance to bones and sinew for tools or ornaments. The Bosmer's refusal to partake in agricultural produce set them apart from other races of Tamriel. It also made them reliant on trade for items they could not produce, such as wines, meads, and plant-based goods crafted outside Valenwood. Despite their dietary restrictions, they were not without a taste for luxury. They often bartered with neighboring Khajiit or Altmer for exotic delicacies, which they incorporated into grand feasts and celebrations. Hospitality held significant cultural importance. To be invited to share a meal with the Bosmer clan was a gesture of profound respect and trust. Feasts often coincided with religious observances or rites of passage, and these occasions displayed the Bosmer's creativity in transforming their carnivorous fare into works of culinary art. Guests from outside Valenwood who attended such gatherings were often struck by the rich flavors and textures, a testament to the Bosmer's adaptability and resourcefulness. Great oaks, towering and ancient trees, serve as the foundation for Bosmer cities. These majestic trees, often centuries old, are far more than mere timber to the Bosmer. They are sacred living entities that form the very heart of their cities. From the roots of these enormous oaks, entire communities spring forth, their homes carved directly into the trunks or nestled among the boughs. A Bosmer city, then, is not something built but grown, a natural extension of the forest. The most famous example of this living architecture is the city of Elden Root, which stands within a particularly colossal great oak. Elden Root serves as the spiritual and political capital of Valenwood, embodying the Bosmer's devotion to both Y'ffre, their nature god, and the Green Pact that governs their way of life. Other settlements like Valenwood, the walking city, demonstrate the Bosmer's remarkable adaptability. Valenwood is not static. It moves through the forest, following the seasons. The city's unique design allows it to relocate at will, with its roots and branches growing new paths and connections as it shifts position. This nomadic aspect reflects the Bosmer's fluid connection to the land, never permanent, always shifting with the flow of nature. Arenthia, one of the oldest and most renowned Bosmer cities, tells a different story. Unlike the others, it is a trade hub, and it represents the blending of Bosmer, Khajiit, and imperial influences. Located on the edge of Gratwood, Arenthia was a place where the Bosmer's instinctual connection to the wild met the need for commerce and diplomacy with outsiders. Its architectural style, a mix of stone and wood, displays the impact of the aliens who once lived in Valenwood, while also reflecting the Bosmer's rejection of over-reliance on permanent, fixed settlements. They embraced mobility even in their urban spaces, balancing their respect for nature with the demands of trade and governance. But it was in cities like Gilverdale and Cormont where Bosmer history was defined by darker events. Gilverdale, for instance, was tragically destroyed by Molag Bal in the first year of the First Era. Though its physical remnants are gone, the memory of its fall continues to fuel the Bosmer's resilience. Cormont, on the other hand, was a place of scandal. Its position as a vital trading post in Gratwood made it a nexus of intrigue. The town's close ties to the Cameron dynasty led to political turmoil when it was revealed that many of its inhabitants were potential heirs to the throne, resulting in a brief yet chaotic surge in its population as Bosmer sought their place in the Cameron lineage. This event, marked by the massacre at Cormont, underscored the tension between the Bosmer's connection to their land and the encroaching influences of politics and empire. Stealth and camouflage are second nature to the Bosmer, blending effortlessly with their environment, particularly the dense green canopies of Valenwood. They are the quintessential guerrilla warriors, striking swiftly from the shadows and disappearing just as quickly, leaving no trace but the echo of their arrows. This uncanny ability to vanish into the wilds, aided by their forest-dwelling practices, makes them exceptional scouts. Even in the heat of battle, Bosmer warriors are ghosts, seamlessly moving through foliage, unseen and unheard, until it's too late. But their connection to the natural world goes beyond mere stealth. Bosmer possess an extraordinary gift, the ability to command simple-minded creatures. This unique skill allows them to enlist the help of forest animals, from the lowly rabbit to the fiercest predators in both combat and everyday life. This power is not just a curious talent, but a critical advantage in the dense, wild landscapes of Valenwood, where the forests are teeming with life that can be bent to their will. It is a bond that reflects the Bosmer's deep ties to the natural world, a world where every leaf and branch is part of a greater whole. In battle, they are an unstoppable force, often overwhelming their enemies with speed and precision, but never in overwhelming numbers. Their tactics are calculated and methodical, relying on ambushes and hit-and-run strategies rather than large-scale confrontations. They are not a race to be underestimated, even by the most formidable opponents. The Bosmer's connection to the land is more than just spiritual. It is integral to their very being. Through their bond with the forest and its creatures, they are able to achieve feats that few other races could ever hope to match. The same traits that make them the best archers in Tamriel, stealth, precision, and a deep understanding of nature, also make them fearsome and unpredictable opponents. In the dense woods of Valenwood, the Bosmer are more than just protectors. They are the land itself, and the land will not let them fall. As the Bosmer say, the forest never forgets. Then there is the wild hunt, a terrifying, uncontrollable ritual that only emerges in times of dire need. During the wild hunt, Bosmer warriors transform into beasts, shedding their mortal forms to become the very predators they so often emulate. It is an ancient and primal magic, a force of nature harnessed by the Green Pact. This transformation, though a source of great power, is not without its consequences. The beastly nature of the wild hunt often leaves Bosmer with little memory of their actions, turning them into untamed monsters, driven only by the need to hunt and kill. Their primary weapon remains the bow. They also wield short blades and spears, weapons crafted with care and attention to detail. These tools are light enough to allow for swift movements, while still being deadly when used by a trained hand. Their craftsmanship is unrivaled in this regard, with each weapon perfectly suited to the task at hand. Even their shields, crafted from the wood of the Grat oaks, are light but durable, designed not for blocking attacks outright, but for redirecting them, keeping the Bosmer mobile in the heat of combat. Concerning politics, the Cameron dynasty, founded by King Eplir during the First Era, brought unity to the Bosmer people at a time when their forested homeland was a fractured, complex patchwork of independent tribes. King Eplir's reign was instrumental in establishing the dynasty that would guide the Bosmer for centuries to come. His leadership marked the beginning of a formalized political structure, transforming what had once been a loosely connected group of tribes into a more unified kingdom. King Eplir's most notable accomplishment was the establishment of the Cameron dynasty, a royal lineage that would rule Valenwood for generations. Under this new structure, the Bosmer began to form a more cohesive national identity, and the kingdom prospered, balancing traditional Bosmer values with the demands of governance. The Cameron rulers were considered both political leaders and spiritual figures, chosen by divine mandate to guide the people in accordance with the Green Pact, a sacred bond with the god Y'ffre. The dynasty's influence spread across Valenwood, with the Cameron family's rule solidifying a sense of Bosmer national pride. They were deeply committed to the spiritual and political harmony that the Green Pact required, ensuring that the kingdom's laws were strictly enforced and that Valenwood's sacred forest remained untouched. The Cameron dynasty became a symbol of stability, with its rulers revered as the embodiment of Y'ffre's will. But while the Camerons brought order, they also brought challenges. Despite their power, the Cameron dynasty was not free from internal strife. Over the centuries, the dynasty faced pressure both from external forces, like the Empire, and from internal factions that rejected the monarchy's hold over the Bosmer people. Some argued that the Cameron rulers were too entwined with the demands of the Empire, while others pushed for a return to the old ways, when the Bosmer were more independent and self-reliant. These tensions grew particularly during the rise of the Second Empire, when Valenwood was divided into administrative districts. While the Cameron monarchy was seen as a stabilizing force, the fragmentation of the Bosmer lands led to rebellions and resistance movements, as various factions within Valenwood sought to reclaim their sovereignty. The imperial divisions were not the only external challenge the Cameron dynasty faced. During the First Era, Valenwood was often under threat from the Nords of Skyrim and the Colovians of Cyrodiil. In 1 E369, the Bosmer were drawn into the conflict over the life of the Nord High King Borgas, who sought to rally support against Valenwood. The Bosmer's response was a wild hunt ritual that reshaped the political landscape and killed King Borgas. The event was a defining moment for the Bosmer, demonstrating both their resilience and the dangerous power of the Green Pact. The Cameron dynasty, however, also played a role in the growing complexity of Bosmer politics. The dynasty's rulers would sometimes find themselves entangled in alliances with other factions, including the Khajiit and the Altmer. These alliances, particularly the one with the Altmer, proved beneficial during times of war, but also created internal strife. While many Bosmer saw the union as a necessary step to secure their survival against greater threats, there were those who resented the influence of the Altmer, especially as it diluted Bosmer traditions and autonomy. The Cameron dynasty's struggles continued throughout the Second Era as the Bosmer kingdom faced the catastrophic impact of the Thracian plague. In 1 E2714, the plague devastated Valenwood, wiping out a large portion of the population. The kingdom's survival required immense adaptation, and during this time, the Cameron rulers struggled to maintain their authority. Despite the chaos, the dynasty endured, though it was severely weakened, leading to a fracturing of Bosmer society. This fracturing would come to define the politics of Valenwood for the rest of the Second Era. By the time of the Aldmeri Dominion's formation in 2406 of the Second Era, the Bosmer were drawn into the wider political conflicts of Tamriel, aligning with the Altmer and Khajiit to form a united front against external threats. Through all the trials and tribulations, the Cameron dynasty remained a cornerstone of Bosmer political life. Though the dynasty's influence waned and political factions rose and fell, the legacy of King Eplir's vision of unity continued to shape the Bosmer people. The Bosmer are a people deeply intertwined with their land, their spirits, and their customs. Among their most sacred and revered artifacts are those that tie them directly to their culture's greatest rituals. The helm of Orain Bearclaw and the ring of the Wild Hunt are two of these powerful items, and they stand as symbols of the Bosmer's unparalleled connection to both nature and their own warrior heritage. The helm of Orain Bearclaw, named for a legendary Bosmer hero, serves as a mark of the deep respect Bosmer have for their warriors and hunters. Orain Bearclaw was an iconic figure, famed for his mastery in both hunting and combat. His helmet, crafted from the hide of a massive bear he had slain, is not only a symbol of his personal triumph, but also embodies the Bosmer ideal of strength and survival within the wilds. The helm is said to carry with it the spirit of the bear itself, imbuing the wearer with the beast's power, courage, and relentless determination. It is a relic of war and hunting prowess, worn by those who seek to protect Valenwood from any threat, as well as by those who honor the old ways of the Green Pact. Few Bosmer can claim to wear the helm, but those who do are regarded as both spiritual and physical leaders, their very presence commanding respect. The Ring of the Wild Hunt, by contrast, speaks to the darker and more primal side of Bosmer life. This ring is crafted from the bones of creatures sacrificed during the Wild Hunt itself. In the hands of a Bosmer, it strengthens the bond with their feral instincts, allowing them to embrace their transformation into powerful beasts. In its presence, the magic of the Green Pact surges, unlocking the latent abilities that the Bosmer possess, turning them into terrifying, shape-shifting warriors. The Bosmer's relationship with the Aelids, too, is an interesting one. Though the Aelid Empire once ruled parts of Valenwood, their impact on Bosmer culture was not as profound as it could have been. The Green Pact severely limited what the Bosmer could adopt from the Aelid legacy, as the Bosmer's strict adherence to the laws of Yefra prohibited the use of stone and other unnatural materials in construction. Despite this, some remnants of Aelid influence remain in Bosmer stonework, particularly in the intricately carved ruins scattered across Valenwood. These marks are a testament to a time when the Aelids and Bosmer coexisted, if not harmoniously, then at least side by side. However, the most notable Aelid influence remains in the architecture of the Great Oaks, where Bosmer skillfully melded their organic designs with the ancient techniques learned from the Aelids. However, it was not only the Aelids' stonework that left a mark, but their ways of thinking, particularly in how to shape their environment. Yet, the Bosmer's respect for the Green Pact meant that they would not directly emulate the Aelid style, often opting instead for the naturalistic, ever-growing structures that came to define their culture. The Bosmer's relationship with outsiders is one marked by caution and a firm sense of self. They have no interest in conquering or influencing the wider world. Instead, they maintain a quiet strength, fully aware that their future relies on the protection of Valenwood. When their land is threatened, the Bosmer can be fierce defenders, as seen in their role during the conflict with the Maormer pirates along their coast. Yet, when left undisturbed, they can be an enigma to those who do not share their connection to the natural world. They are not a race that seeks the spotlight, but neither do they shrink from the challenges that fate may throw their way. In the grand sweep of history, it is this balance between isolation and interaction, between wildness and wisdom, that has allowed the Bosmer to endure, to remain true to themselves even as the world around them shifts and changes. Their culture is not static. It is one that evolves with the forest, constantly adapting to the ever-changing needs of both the land and its people. And as long as the Grat oaks stand tall, their story will continue to unfold in the depths of Valenwood, watched over by the ever-present gaze of Yffre. As the last rays of the sun filter through the towering Grat oaks, the Bosmer remain ever watchful, their spirits intertwined with the heartbeat of Valenwood itself. They are a people both fierce and elusive, shaped by a pact that binds them to the land and forged by the wild beauty and dangers of their forested home. Whether as hunters, guardians, or keepers of ancient secrets, the Bosmer have withstood the test of time, carving their legacy into the roots of Tamriel. Their story, one of mystery, resilience, and an unwavering bond to nature, continues to unfold beneath the ancient canopy, waiting for those brave enough to seek it. And as the moon rises over Valenwood, one truth remains clear. The Bosmer, like the forest itself, will never be fully understood, but their legacy is eternal.